Welcome to Serial Killers with Ben Carter. I'm your host, Ben Carter. In the small town of Del Rio, Texas, on December 31, 1999, the turn of the millennium was supposed to be a time of celebration, of new beginnings. Instead, it became a horrifying night of terror that would shock the community to its core. As families across the world were preparing to ring in the year 2000, one family's life was about to be irrevocably shattered. In the quiet suburban home of the Harris family, the unthinkable was about to unfold. As most of the family slept, an intruder crept into the home, undetected. He made his way to the bedroom of 13-year-old Kayleen Harris. In the dead of night, the intruder, armed with a knife, attacked Kayleen and her 10-year-old friend, Crystal Searles. What happened next was a chilling display of brutality that would leave Kayleen dead and Crystal clinging to life, her throat slashed. Miraculously, Crystal survived the attack and was able to provide a detailed description of the intruder to the police. Her description would lead to the arrest of a man named Tommy Lynn Sells. Tommy Lynn Sells was a drifter, moving from town to town, leaving a trail of violence in his wake. A man who was no stranger to law enforcement, his criminal history spanned across several states and included everything from theft to assault. But nothing in his past compared to the horrifying crime he was accused of committing in Del Rio. Sells was soon linked to a series of murders across the United States, earning him the chilling moniker of coast-to-coast killer. His crimes were as random as they were brutal, with victims ranging in age from toddlers to the elderly, a grim testament to his indiscriminate violence. As investigators delved into Sells' dark past, they unearthed a pattern of abuse, neglect, and violence that began in his childhood. It was a disturbed upbringing that seemed to foreshadow his later life of crime. But was this a story of nature or nurture, of a man born evil or made that way by his circumstances? Sells' life story poses one of the most haunting questions. What leads a man to become a serial killer? Is it the result of a traumatic past, or is there something inherently wrong, a darkness that resides within certain individuals? As we delve deeper into the life and crimes of Tommy Lynn Sells, this question remains at the heart of our exploration. From his turbulent childhood to his heinous acts of violence, the life of Tommy Lynn Sells is a chilling journey into the psyche of a serial killer. In order to fully comprehend the world in which Sells moved and committed these horrific acts, we need to paint a picture of the setting. It was the late 1990s, a time of rapid technological advancement and economic prosperity, but not all parts of America reaped the benefits equally. The small town of Del Rio, Texas, where Sells committed his most notorious crime, is nestled close to the Mexican border. It's a place where the arid climate and expansive landscapes make isolation an easy reality. The town is characterized by modest homes and blue-collar workers, where everyone knows everyone else, and the idea of crime on such a horrifying scale was unimaginable. During this period, Del Rio was grappling with social issues common to border towns. Drug trafficking, illegal immigration, and economic disparity were realities that residents had to face on a daily basis. Despite these challenges, community ties were strong, and the residents prided themselves on their resilience and solidarity. In contrast, Tommy Lynn Sells was a drifter, a transient figure who didn't form lasting ties with people or places. He moved from state to state, town to town, always on the periphery, never truly belonging. His nomadic lifestyle was a stark contrast to the close-knit community of Del Rio, and his presence would send shockwaves through the town. The social climate of the time was one of growing unease, with increasing reports of violent crimes across the nation. The media amplified these fears, creating a sense of paranoia and distrust. In this fraught environment, Sells was able to exploit the vulnerabilities of others, slipping in and out of towns like a phantom, leaving devastation in his wake. The juxtaposition of Sells, the transient outsider, against the backdrop of small-town America, provides a chilling context for his heinous crimes. It paints a picture of a society grappling with fear and uncertainty, a society in which a man like Tommy Lynn Sells could lurk undetected, preying on the most vulnerable. The transient nature of his life, coupled with the turbulent times, created a lethal combination that would culminate in a brutal spree of violence, forever shattering the peace of the communities he passed through. The first known victim of Tommy Lynn Sells was a young salesperson named Ina Court and her 4-year-old son Rory. In 1985, Sells was spending time in Forsyth, Missouri, when he met Court at a local yard sale. He was invited to her home and returned later that night, brutally murdering both mother and son. The discovery of their bodies sent shockwaves through the small community, but there were few leads and no solid suspects. Without any concrete evidence, the case quickly went cold. Over the next decade, Sells continued his nomadic lifestyle, leaving a trail of violence in his wake. He would later confess to more than a dozen murders during this time, although only a fraction of these claims were ever substantiated. The true number of his victims may never be known, given his frequent moves and the lack of evidence left at many of the crime scenes. In Del Rio, Texas, Sells committed his most infamous crime. On December 31, 1999, he broke into the home of the Harris family while they were away at a New Year's Eve party. When 13-year-old Kayleen Harris and her friend Crystal Searles returned home later that night, they were attacked. Kayleen was killed, but 10-year-old Crystal survived, despite having her throat slit, and was able to provide a description of the perpetrator. Sells' victims were as diverse as the places he passed through. They ranged from young to old, female and male, across multiple states, and from various walks of life. His choice of victims appeared to be opportunistic rather than targeted, further complicating the task of linking him to the crimes. He was a true drifter, not just in his lifestyle, but in his method of killing as well, using whatever means were available to him at the time, from knives to bats or his bare hands. The nature of Sells' crimes and his transient lifestyle made it difficult for law enforcement to connect the dots. Many of his victims were initially deemed to be isolated incidents, their deaths attributed to local crime or unfortunate accidents, their true connection to the drifter only becoming apparent years later. This chilling pattern would continue for nearly 2 decades before law enforcement would finally catch up with Tommy Lynn Sells. As Sells' crimes escalated, so too did the urgency to apprehend him. But it wasn't until the brutal attack on Kayleen Harris and Crystal Searles that a breakthrough emerged. The surviving victim, Crystal, was instrumental in providing a detailed description of her attacker. Her courageous testimony was the first solid lead investigators had in their pursuit of the elusive killer. Local law enforcement, in conjunction with the Texas Rangers, began an intense manhunt for the assailant. The sketch derived from Crystal's description was circulated widely, and the media attention grew. The small town of Del Rio was in a state of shock and fear, with community members anxiously awaiting news of an arrest. Meanwhile, Sells had once again disappeared, blending back into the transient lifestyle that had shielded him for so many years. However, his anonymity was beginning to crumble. The detailed sketch and increased public scrutiny were closing the net. In San Antonio, Texas, a tip came forward that would change the course of the investigation. A man recognized the sketch from a local news broadcast and identified Sells, a casual acquaintance. This tip led investigators to a local homeless shelter where Sells had been known to stay. After weeks of tireless investigation, law enforcement arrested Sells on January 2, 2000. His arrest marked the beginning of a complex and extensive investigative process. Detectives started piecing together Sells' convoluted trail, connecting him to numerous unsolved crimes across the country. The initial focus was on the brutal attack in Del Rio, but it quickly became apparent that they were dealing with a suspect responsible for much more. As investigators delved into Sells' past, they began uncovering a grim tapestry of violence that spanned decades and crossed state lines. Sells' lack of a consistent modus operandi and his random choice of victims made the task of linking him to his crimes challenging. Each case required meticulous examination, with investigators sifting through years of cold case files, looking for the slightest thread that could connect Sells to his victims. The scale of the investigation was daunting, but the dogged persistence of law enforcement was slowly bringing Sells' violent history to light. As the investigation into Tommy Lynn Sells unfolded, the complexity of his criminal profile began to emerge. He was not the typical serial killer that investigators often encountered. Sells did not have a specific victim type, nor did he carry out his murders using a consistent method. This unpredictable behavior made him particularly dangerous and difficult to track. He could blend into the landscape of countless cities, states, and communities, leaving a trail of violence in his wake without raising suspicion. Early in his life, there were signs of the monster Sells would become. As a child, he exhibited extreme behavioral issues, engaged in petty theft, and even committed acts of animal cruelty, a common precursor to violent behavior in adults. His tumultuous family life, marked by neglect and abuse, likely played a significant role in shaping his criminal inclinations. A transient by nature, Sells was constantly on the move, drifting from town to town, living off petty theft and taking odd jobs. This nomadic lifestyle not only allowed him to evade law enforcement, but also provided ample opportunities to find new victims. His lack of a permanent address or steady employment made it difficult for authorities to establish a clear timeline of his activities. Psychologically, Sells was a conundrum. He exhibited traits common among psychopaths, including manipulation, lack of empathy, and a total disregard for the rights of others. Yet he also had the ability to appear charming and harmless, a trait that enabled him to earn the trust of potential victims. He was a paradox of the ordinary and the monstrous, a man who could sit next to you at a bar, share a laugh, then leave to commit unspeakable acts of violence. Profiling Sells was further complicated by his penchant for lying. He often embellished or fabricated aspects of his crimes, making it difficult to separate fact from fiction. His claims of committing as many as 70 murders across the country were initially met with skepticism. However, as investigators began to connect the dots, they realized the horrifying possibility that Sells' claims may not be as outlandish as they first thought. Despite the challenges, investigators remained committed to uncovering the full extent of Sells' crimes. Their dedication would lead them down a dark path, revealing a chilling portrait of a man whose capacity for violence was virtually unmatched. The once elusive drifter was now under the microscope, his horrific deeds slowly coming into focus. As the investigation into Lynn Sells unfolded, the importance of forensic evidence became increasingly apparent. In an era where DNA profiling was becoming more sophisticated and reliable, it served as a crucial tool in connecting Sells to his numerous crimes. In one case, Sells was linked to a 1987 murder in Arkansas through DNA evidence collected from the crime scene. The victim had been assaulted and strangled, and her case had remained unsolved for more than a decade. However, advanced DNA testing techniques matched Sells' genetic profile to the evidence, providing a major breakthrough in the investigation. Meanwhile, a set of palm prints became pivotal in another case. Sells had left a clear imprint on a windowsill at a murder scene in Missouri. Once he was in custody, investigators were able to match the prints to him conclusively. The seemingly mundane act of pushing open a window had become a damning piece of evidence, tying Sells irrevocably to the crime. Witness testimony also played a key role in the investigation. Sells' modus operandi often involved befriending his victims or their families, gaining their trust before making his deadly move. These interactions left a trail of witnesses, some of whom were able to provide detailed descriptions of Sells, aiding in his eventual identification and capture. One such account came from a survivor, a young girl who had managed to escape after Sells attacked her and her family in Texas. Her testimony was crucial, not only in identifying Sells, but also in providing a chilling first-hand account of his ruthlessness. Yet, despite these breakthroughs, the complexity of the investigation was daunting. Sells had committed crimes across multiple states, each with its own law enforcement agencies, jurisdictions, and unsolved cases. Piecing together his trail of violence was like assembling a grim jigsaw puzzle with pieces scattered across the country. Sells' own erratic recounting of his crimes further muddied the waters. While he often boasted about the number of his victims, he also frequently changed details or retracted statements entirely. This left investigators grappling with the task of sifting through his stories, seeking kernels of truth amidst the lies. Nonetheless, the persistence of the investigators began to pay off. With each passing day, the horrifying extent of Sells' murderous spree was becoming clearer, edging closer to the brutal truth of one man's reign of terror. In the early hours of January 2, 2000, Tommy Lynn Sells was finally apprehended. The catalyst for his arrest was the story of a brave young Texas girl, Crystal Searles. Having survived a brutal attack by Sells, she was able to provide law enforcement with a detailed description, ultimately leading to his capture. It was a significant turning point in a manhunt that had spanned the breadth and width of the United States. Sells' trial began in Del Rio, Texas, on September 10, 2000. The courtroom was filled with a palpable tension as spectators, law enforcement, and family members of the victims waited in apprehensive silence. The charges were for the capital murder of Kayleen Harris, a 13-year-old girl, and the attempted murder of Crystal Searles. In a chilling moment, Crystal herself took to the witness stand. She recounted the horrific attack, identifying Sells as the man who had slit her throat and left her for dead. Her testimony, delivered with a courage belying her tender age, was a powerful indictment. The trial proceeded with a parade of evidence, from the damning palm print to the DNA matched to Sells. Forensic experts testified to the match between the evidence collected and Sells' genetic profile. Police officers, detectives, and other witnesses also testified, painting a picture of Sells' calculated brutality. Sells, for his part, showed little emotion throughout the proceedings. His defense team attempted to build a case around his troubled childhood, presenting it as a mitigating factor. However, the sheer brutality and extent of his crimes overshadowed these attempts. The public reaction was one of revulsion and horror. As the news of the trial spread, communities across the country were gripped by the unfolding narrative. The fact that Sells had roamed freely, committing heinous acts in multiple states, sent shockwaves of fear and disbelief. On September 18, 2000, after a trial that had lasted just over a week, the jury found Sells guilty of capital murder. As the verdict was announced, a hush fell over the courtroom. The journey to bring Sells to justice had been long and arduous, but the legal system had finally caught up with the man who had held the country in a grip of terror. Underneath the surface of Tommy Lynn Sells' horrifying crimes, there was a complex and disturbed psyche. As we delve deeper into his mind, we find a disturbing mix of past traumas, possible motivations, and psychological evaluations that helped to shape the man he became. Sells' defense team highlighted his troubled upbringing during his trial. Born in 1964, Sells had a childhood marred by neglect, abuse, and hardship. His mother was a drug addict, his father absent, and he was often left in the care of a man who sexually abused him. These experiences undoubtedly left lasting scars, and it's not unreasonable to postulate that they may have played a role in shaping his future behavior. However, while trauma can contribute to behavioral issues, it is important to note that many individuals who experience childhood abuse do not grow up to commit violent crimes. There's more to Sells' story than a troubled past, and to fully understand the man, we must look at his psychological profile. Psychiatrists who evaluated Sells diagnosed him with antisocial personality disorder, a condition characterized by a long-term pattern of disregard for, or violation of, the rights of others. Individuals with this disorder often display a lack of empathy and a tendency towards impulsive behavior, traits that were evident in Sells throughout his life. In addition to this, Sells also exhibited traits of sadism, taking pleasure in the pain and suffering of others. His crimes were not just acts of violence, they were manifestations of a deep-seated desire to exert control and inflict harm. This is evident in the brutal nature of his attacks and his apparent lack of remorse. Sells himself provided further insight into his motivations during his numerous confessions. He spoke of a compulsion to kill, an urge that he described as an addiction. This suggests a level of psychological dependency on his actions, a need to commit violent acts to satisfy some internal craving. Yet despite these insights, Sells remains a figure shrouded in mystery. His motives were multifaceted and complex, a blend of psychological disorders, personal experiences, and perhaps elements that we may never fully understand. His case serves as a stark reminder of the potential darkness lurking in the human psyche, a testament to the depths to which a person can descend when stripped of empathy and moral restraint. The aftermath of Tommy Lynn Sells' reign of terror was a somber period for communities across the United States. The scars left by his atrocities were both physical and emotional, touching not only the survivors but also the locales where his crimes took place. The lingering trauma caused by his actions reshaped lives, altering people's sense of safety and trust in their fellow man. For Crystal Sells, the daughter of Sells who survived his attempt to murder her, this impact was profound. Despite her young age at the time of the attack, the experience had a significant effect on her subsequent development. In interviews, she has spoken about her struggles with trust and her ongoing battle with PTSD. Yet she has also shown remarkable resilience, using her experiences to advocate for victims of violent crimes and to raise awareness of the long-lasting effects of trauma. The media coverage of Sells' case was extensive, his crimes sparking a nationwide conversation about the nature of evil and the factors that lead individuals to commit such heinous acts. His story was featured in numerous crime documentaries, books, and news articles, all attempting to understand the man behind the crimes and the motives that drove him to kill. In the world of criminology and forensic psychology, Sells' case has been the subject of much study. His confessions and interviews offer a rare glimpse into the mind of a serial killer, providing valuable data for researchers seeking to understand the psychological mechanisms at play in such individuals. His case has contributed to our understanding of antisocial personality disorder and sadism, and has highlighted the complexities involved in determining the causes of extreme violent behavior. Yet for all the academic interest and media coverage, the legacy of Tommy Lynn Sells is ultimately one of pain and sorrow. His victims, their families, and the communities he terrorized were left to pick up the pieces, their lives forever marked by his actions. His story serves as a chilling reminder of the capacity for brutality that can exist within an individual, a stark illustration of the potential consequences when such capacities are left unchecked. As society continues to grapple with the realities of violent crime and the complexities of human psychology, the story of Tommy Lynn Sells will remain a somber testament to the profound impact such individuals can have on the world around them. It is a stark reminder of the importance of understanding and addressing the root causes of violent behavior, in the hopes of preventing such atrocities from happening in the future. Yet the story of Tommy Lynn Sells is far from over. As with many notorious serial killers, Sells left behind a trail of unanswered questions that continue to haunt investigators to this day. Despite confessing to as many as 70 murders, Sells was ultimately convicted for only one. The details of the remaining alleged murders he confessed to are sketchy at best, and without sufficient evidence or corroboration, these confessions remain unverified. The unsettling possibility that there could be many more unknown victims of Sells adds an even darker layer to his already chilling tale. Alternative theories about Sells' life and crimes also abound. Some argue that he was not a serial killer at all, but rather a pathological liar who fabricated his horrific tales for attention. Others suggest that Sells may have had accomplices who have yet to be identified. These theories, while largely speculative, underscore the difficulty of separating fact from fiction in a case as convoluted as that of Sells. Even more haunting are the implications of Sells' story for our understanding of human nature and the capacity for evil. His crimes challenge our preconceived notions about what makes a person commit such heinous acts. They force us to confront the uncomfortable reality that individuals like Sells exist in our society, individuals who are capable of committing unthinkable acts of violence without remorse or regret. The story of Tommy Lynn Sells is a chilling reminder of the dark side of human nature, a side that is often hidden beneath the surface, but that can surface with devastating consequences. It underscores the importance of understanding the psychological, societal, and environmental factors that contribute to violent behavior, in order to better prevent such acts from occurring in the future. Yet in the end, the most enduring legacy of Tommy Lynn Sells is not the crimes he committed, but the lives he affected. It is the victims and their families, forever scarred by his actions, who carry the true burden of his deeds. Their stories of survival and resilience are a poignant reminder of the human capacity for strength in the face of unspeakable adversity. It is these stories, rather than the grisly details of Sells' crimes, that should define his legacy. For it is only through understanding the human cost of such violence, and through honoring the strength and resilience of those who survive it, that we can hope to prevent similar tragedies from unfolding in the future. Thanks for listening. This has been Serial Killers with Ben Carter. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to follow us wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you'd like to support the show, subscribe to the Forbidden Knowledge Network on Patreon. Subscribe now. Subscribe.